So it's emerged that government forked out over R1 million to bring Bester and Nandipha Magudumana home from Tanzania. It's been reported the rapist and murderer also moved in and out of the Mangaung Correctional Centre, taking lavish weekends away before faking his death and escaping in May last year. So, eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila has been looking into all aspects of this developing story and joins us now from Cape Town. Aviwe, thanks so much for your time. So let's first of all talk about this charter flight. Cost South African taxpayers R1.4 million. What did the Home Affairs Minister say about why they chose a charter as opposed to just waiting for a commercial flight?
Well, it was the recommended. Well, it's what the authorities on the other side wanted, Sally. It's a story about luxury, really. We found out today that it cost R1.4 million to take those Home Affairs officials to Tanzania to get Thabo Bester as well as Nandipha Magudumana, who are also accused of having luxury escapes from prison. Remember, Thabo Bester, during the time that he was incarcerated, allegedly escaping there. But we heard from Home Affairs Minister today that the reasoning for the chartered flight is that the authorities in Tanzania suggested that they won't be dealing with the police, nor will they hand over the fugitives to the South African National Defence Force, being wary of rendition, where you hand over someone that's wanted in another country to the police official, and you're just wary of how the treatment is going to be. So they said that they wanted to do it in the right channels, and that included the Home Affairs officials, especially the immigrations officials. That then prompted the Department of Home Affairs to go to these aviation companies, basically asking the quotations for these flights. The cheapest that they got, they told us today, is that it's R1.4 million, Sally, and that's how then the 14 officials from Home Affairs managed to go to Tanzania and then bring back Thabo Bester as well as Dr. Nandipha Magudumana. In fact, let's take a listen to that briefing that we heard earlier on with the Home Affairs Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi.
We asked any company that could give us an airplane that can carry 14 people, and which will be able to get landing rights and all the documentation on their own without the help from the state in less than 24 hours. Because as you know, South Africans were eager to know whether this deportation is taking place. And there are companies who responded. The last one which we took was the cheapest at R1.4 million. It was the cheapest of them all, and we opted for that. We never ask anybody that we want a luxury flight, as everybody is saying. It is the cheapest flight we could get, as one of those who responded to our request for proposals, that we want somebody who can do that. And that's why then the 14 people got in and they came back. Now, they came back as our law enforcement officer under immigration. The head of law enforcement in immigration is the one who led that team to go and fetch him, and Tanzanian presented to him, and our embassy got him first and given to him to officials.
And now it's emerging, and we saw these reports over the weekend, that Thabo Bester, it seems, was able to get a kind of weekend pass from jail and go spend time at luxury hotels with his girlfriend and then head back to jail on Monday morning. JJ Tebane was able to ask Ronald Lamola, our Justice Minister, about this to find out exactly when they knew these details. Tell us more.
Well, it seems like the Correctional Services Minister, Ronald Lamola, had whiff of this as they concluded these investigations into the escape of Thabo Bester earlier this year. That's at the end of March. Remember the allegations there, Sally, is that it's all been luxurious, even from the time that he was actually incarcerated, where we heard that even last year, March, that's before the elaborate escape itself that happened in May, he was going to this boutique hotel some 25 kilometers away from the Mangaung Correctional Centre, where he spent nights on end. For example, there are receipts from this boutique hotel that suggest that a TK Ngwana booked in there for 4 nights at the end of March, as well as 1 night that's in April. Of course, it will then confirm also that the license that checked in was Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's license, which suggested that the couple spent these luxurious getaways away from prison even before the actual escape. Remember, Remember just last week, Sally, we had that portfolio committee meeting where the Justice Cluster, in fact, was meeting. You'd expect that this information would be furnished to the department, to Parliament, given that they were looking at the circumstances around Thabo Bester's escape, but sadly it wasn't. But it turns out that the minister actually had knowledge of this even before the cluster met last week. In fact, let's take a listen to what the minister had to say to Professor J.J. Tabane just last night.
This guy was so brazen that he could even go to hotels and weekend aways. It was just a big frenzy. The escape was just like a daring thing that says, if we can do all these things, probably nobody will notice if we escape.
Yeah, and those are things, obviously, that we are going to deal with.
But were you aware, or you are just recently aware of this?
They came through the reports that we were getting. So,
yeah.
And that's why we are saying this facility is operated by G4S. So G4S will have to deal with this on that context.
On the in and out of holidays and so on, when did you know about this in terms of your own reports? When did you know that this was happening?
It came out of the investigating report that there are suspicions that it looks like. When I visited the facility on the late March this year.
So you knew in late March that there might be a possibility that there's been this holidays.
When our guys took over you remember when we implemented the Section 112. So our guys took over the facility. Then they were able to access a number of people who were able to then tell what could have been the picture
Sounds
of what
like
happened.
A big bungle.
It does sound like a big bungle, but of course the question is, does this sort of thing happen quite a lot in other prisons? If you have the money to bribe the guards to get out for the weekend. I mean, certainly I think this is shining a spotlight on what happens in our prisons, particularly in this privately run prison, privately run by G4S. We have heard from the police, they said a few days ago, that they are expecting to make more arrests. And certainly, if you look at the scale of the escape, there certainly have to be more than 3 or 4 people involved. Any more details from police on how quickly they might be able to make those arrests?
Well, just yesterday, the police minister, Begekela, suggested that more arrests could be expected any day from now. But also last week at that parliamentary briefing by the cluster, of course, where they had the G4S officials, they had JICS, they had the Department of Correctional Services, they had the minister there as well. It was delved into even people that were suspended that would tell you that the investigations are ongoing. Remember that 7 more suspensions have happened at G4S, the security company that runs the Mangaung prison. This specifically looks at an unauthorized vehicle that actually entered the premises of G4S, the Mangaung Correctional Center itself, days before Thabo Bester escaped. Of course, it is believed that that vehicle was carrying the dead body that what later on was touted as being Thabo Bester in that fire. So there's a lot to look into, Sally, and the parliamentarians will tell you that, of course, the corruption is quite brazen in its nature in these prisons. Never mind what happens, of course, inside prison, where we heard from experts such as Calvin Rafadi suggesting that things like bringing in your girlfriend inside prison is another thing if you have the money to do it. But now it's shockingly surprising that they're even being let outside prison. In fact, it's a conversation that I had with Glennis Baitenbach from the from the Democratic Alliance. Let's take a listen to what she had to say there.
It most certainly wasn't furnished to Parliament last week. There were rumours to that effect, but no proof. I've subsequently been furnished with some documentation that appears to suggest that it might be true. Certainly we'll be calling back some people. We'll also be calling other people because not all the right people were sent to Parliament last week. A lot of people were sent as the fall guy. It suggests that there's something much more here than just an escape. It suggests corruption on a grand scale. It suggests that the entire system has collapsed and that prisons, generally speaking, are a joke. Because if that can be the arrangement at this particular prison, there's no reason to assume that it's not the arrangement at any other prison.
Yeah, and I suppose that is the big question. You know, it's going to hopefully shine a spotlight on many other prisons. If Thabo Bester was able to book out for the weekend and go spend some time with his girlfriend, Why couldn't other prisoners do it? Surely this sort of bribery is happening elsewhere. There is so much still to uncover. Thank you very much for bringing the latest information to us. That, of course, is eNCA's Aviwe Mtila coming to us live from Cape Town. Now,